One day I had a terrible headache. My brother-in-law said, "Sister-in-law, come, let me massage some oil on your head." When he massaged the oil into my head, I felt such peace that it was as if I had lost all sense of time the entire night. After that, I started asking him to massage my head every day. One day, after he had applied oil to my body, I set up a camera and called him over the next day. When I looked at the footage in the morning, I was completely shaken. Sometimes we don't respect the boundaries of relationships, and because of this, we suffer greatly. Every relationship has a limit, and if a person crosses that limit, the relationship can become a problem for them. The same thing happened to me. I crossed the boundary of a relationship, and as a result, my life was ruined. It became difficult for me to forget everything that had happened to me. In the past few days, my headache had worsened to the point where no medicine was effective. I couldn't sleep at night. I would stay awake all night, wandering around the house or tossing and turning in bed. The emotional turmoil drove me to the edge, making my headache even worse. My brother-in-law Sujay, who was younger than me, cared for me deeply. We had become very close. I had forgotten what the relationship between a sister-in-law and brother-in-law should be like. He saw me awake for many nights. One day, seeing my distress, he said, "Sister-in-law, let me massage some oil into your head. Your pain will go away." Hearing this, I laughed, thinking he was joking. I said, "All right, go ahead." He brought the oil and started massaging my head thoroughly while telling me stories about his day. The vigorous massage of his fingers brought me great comfort. I had a habit of drinking tea every night. Sujay would bring me tea. After drinking it, I fell into a deep sleep, as if I hadn't slept in days. When I woke up and went to the bathroom to bathe, I was shocked to find oil on various parts of my body. Perhaps I had rubbed the oil around while I was asleep. After getting a full night's sleep, my headache disappeared. I spent the entire day working. It had been a year since I got married, and I had spent that year happily. When I came into this house as a daughter-in-law, Sujay was only 16 years old. He was very childish and seemed like a younger brother to me. My husband had told me that their father had passed away early, so Sujay never got to experience a father's love. His mother paid little attention to him or the house, and my husband Sudeep wasn't around much either. So Sudeep asked me to take care of Sujay as if he were my own child. I promised him I would, and I kept that promise. My husband Sudeep worked in another city and only came home for 4 days a month. The rest of the time, I spent with my younger brother-in-law Sujay and my mother-in-law. Sujay was now 17 years old and had grown into a young man. He was only 4 years younger than me. Even after coming home from college, he would constantly hover around me, calling me sister-in-law. Since Sudeep wasn't around, Sujay took care of all my big and small tasks. After returning from college, he would help me with my work and then spend time with us. Over time, I noticed that Sujay didn't like Sudeep. Whenever his name was mentioned, Sujay would either go silent or change the subject. I tried to understand what problem he had with Sudeep, but I never gathered the courage to ask him directly. Sudeep's mother would spend the entire day at the neighbors' houses and come home in the evening to sleep early. The next morning, she would go back to the neighbors. So I had no problems from her side. Life was going well, but without Sudeep, I couldn't sleep at night. I would spend the entire night tossing and turning. Sometimes I felt like going to Sudeep myself, but that was impossible. That's why I often had headaches. Sujay wanted to know, "How long will you keep taking medicines? It's not good for your headaches. Let me give you a massage. It will bring you peace." I told Sujay, "Instead of giving me a massage, send me to your brother for a few days. I'll feel better on my own." Hearing this, Sujay said, "If you leave, what will happen to me? I can't live without you." His words made me laugh out loud. He used to talk to me like this. Honestly, spending time with Sujay had become a habit for me. Sometimes we would go out together. At night, he would bring me ice cream and we would watch movies together all night. When I went shopping with Sujay, he would insist on buying me modern and fashionable clothes. He wouldn't even let me wear a scarf around the house. Whenever I wore a scarf while working, he would pull it off and throw it aside, saying, "How can you work wearing this in such heat?" He was very particular about everything. He loved light-colored clothes, so whenever we went to the market together, he would pick out light-colored clothes for me and have them tailored in a very fashionable way. He was very interested in what I wore. I often told him that his future wife would be very lucky to have a husband who designs clothes for her. Hearing this, he would say, "Right now, you're the lucky one because I'm putting in so much effort for you." And truly, I was lucky because he never said no to anything I asked him to do. He would design all sorts of stylish necklines and back designs for my clothes, some of which would go as far as the shoulders. The shirts would be so tight that sometimes it was hard to breathe, but Sujay loved such clothes. I considered him like my own child, so I never refused to wear the clothes he liked. One day, I was working in the kitchen wearing light pink clothes. It was very hot that day, and my entire body was drenched in sweat, making my clothes nearly see-through. I was cooking quickly without a scarf. Suddenly, he came in from behind and said, "Today you look very hot," which made me blush with embarrassment. I quickly started looking for my scarf. He then said, "I was just joking, sister-in-law. Relax and do your work." And then he left the kitchen. When Sudeep came to visit me, Sujay would talk to me very little during those days. He would focus entirely on his studies. I was happy that Sujay was working hard on his studies, and I was so busy having fun with Sudeep that I didn't even notice Sujay's change in behavior. Sudeep would stay with me for only 4 days before leaving again. After that, Sujay would go back to treating me the same way as before. He was very stubborn when it came to me. He wanted me to agree to everything he said. One day, a friend of Sujay's brother was getting married, and Sujay insisted that I go with him. At first I refused, but when I saw how sad he became, I agreed. However, I kept wondering what I would do at the wedding of his friend's brother. When we arrived, I was surprised to find that all of his friends knew me well. They spoke to me as if we had met many times before. They said, "Sujay only talks about you and he always praises you." They even expressed a desire to meet me again. On the way back, I asked Sujay, "What have you told your friends about me that they know me so well?" Sujay replied, "You are everything to me. I always talk about you." At that time, I didn't understand the meaning of his words, but the day I did, it shook me to the core. Sujay would massage my head every night, and I would sleep soundly. But the next day, when I saw oil stains all over my body, I was puzzled. That's why one day, I set up a camera in the room and let Sujay give me a massage. Soon after, I fell asleep as usual. When I woke up the next morning and watched the camera recording, I was stunned. I couldn't believe what Sujay had done to me. I had trusted him and considered him like a younger brother, but he had disrespected the bond between us. In the video, Sujay first massaged my head properly and then made tea for me. After I drank the tea, Sujay left the room and I went to bed. A little later, I fell into a deep sleep. Sujay then returned, opened the door quietly, and came into the room. The sound of the door didn't even wake me. He closed the door behind him and approached me. What I saw next was beyond my belief. Sujay sat quietly for a while just watching me. Then, he began touching my face with his fingers. He took out his phone and clicked several pictures of me. Slowly, he started removing my shirt. The oil bottle he had brought for the massage was still in the room. He poured some oil into his hand and began massaging my body. I lay there unconscious as he continued to touch me. Then he started kissing me and crossed every limit. He broke down every boundary that stood between us. Overcome by his emotions, he spent several hours with me. When he was done, he left the room the same way he had entered. He had shattered my dignity. I had always considered him my younger brother, which is why I was so close to him. But I never realized that his character was flawed. I was locked in my room. When Sujay returned from college, he came straight to my room, sat close to me and asked, "Bobby, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" I looked at him deeply and handed him the camera recording. He remained silent for a while. What he said next sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, he started confessing his love for me. He said that he had always longed for love, and when I started paying attention to him, it made him feel good. He felt that there was finally someone in his life who cared about him. He said he could no longer stay away from me, and this was why his elder brother's presence bothered him so much. Whenever Sudeep visited, Sujay would lock himself in his room because he couldn't bear to see us together. He had always disliked Sudeep, as their father had favored Sudeep and even left this house to him before passing away. Sujay resented the happiness Sudeep and I shared. That's why, whenever Sujay shopped for me, He intentionally bought clothes that would reveal my body. He wasn't interested in light colors. Rather, he was drawn to the way light colors highlighted my figure. He said he was captivated by beauty and just wanted to possess me. He couldn't control his emotions. Seeing me awake at night, thinking about his brother, made him feel ill. He wished that I would stay awake for him and spend my life with him. He tried to separate me from his brother and bring me closer to himself. That's why he started massaging me, to give me comfort. Then, he would mix sleeping pills in my tea. When he was sure I was in a deep sleep, he would come into my room to satisfy his desires. He had even told his friends that he was in love with me, and it was his friends who had given him these ideas. Sujay and his friends were at the threshold of adolescence, so they didn't fully understand the difference between right and wrong. He had dishonored me. Hearing Sujay's words, tears welled up in my eyes. He had done all of this, and I was his brother's wife. Yet, he had violated our bond. I was overwhelmed with shame. I looked at Sujay with disgust. Then he sat near my feet again and said, "I only love you, and this love will kill me." After his father passed away, he couldn't bear his mother's strange indifference. He said that his mother never cared about his feelings and desires. Instead, she spent all her time wandering around the neighborhood. This had left him feeling utterly alone. When I came into this house, his loneliness disappeared, and he grew close to me. I pushed Sujay away with my feet. I didn't even want to look at his face. I could never forgive him for what he had done. I knew it wasn't entirely Sujay's fault. He was desperately seeking a relationship and forgot his limits in trying to possess me. I also never taught him the difference between right and wrong. When he tailored clothes for me, I accepted them because I understood his preferences. I roamed the house without a dupatta in his presence. I considered him my younger brother, but in reality he wasn't my brother. Our relationship was that of Devar and Bobby, and I failed to respect that boundary. In today's world, where even a 13-year-old knows everything, how could I think that my 17-year-old brother-in-law was just a child? I told him, "It would be best if you kept your distance from me and didn't show me your face again." It had become impossible for me to live under the same roof as him. He pleaded, "Please don't tell this to my brother." I didn't have the courage to tell Sudeep such a big truth. He was very ashamed. Today he went to his room, but I had lost respect for myself. I immediately called Sudeep and told him, "I don't want to live without you anymore. Either you come here or take me to you." He was surprised at first, wondering what had suddenly happened to me. But when I insisted, he said, he will call me to him soon. He needed some time to arrange everything and to talk to his mother about it. I told Sudeep to take me within 15 days, or I would leave this house forever. Sudeep promised that he would bring me to him within 15 days. I spent those 15 days locked in my room, trying to forget everything completely. My mother-in-law still didn't care about the house. She was more concerned with the neighborhood than her own home. If she had looked after her child instead of others, Sujoy wouldn't have done what he did. He was a victim and had lost his way. Every relationship has a limit, and I had forgotten that limit with Sujoy. Now I'm paying the price for it. I burned all my old clothes. I realized that I was living in this house with an outsider, and that I now needed to hide myself. Sometimes we think certain things are small, but they're not as insignificant as they seem. Today, I've come to realize the value of a dupatta, and how precious it was just as I was almost ruined. To those listening to this story, I just want to say, take care of yourselves. Friends, thank you for listening to the story. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll get the next update first.